It's weird. It's like you're using pseudonyms, but you got to use first names to make sure we know that they're female, even though they're biologically not. The new plaintiffs are at least as strongly situated in terms of their Eighth Amendment claims as the existing plaintiffs. Yeah, cruel and unusual. And they're ordered to immediately transfer them back to women's penitentiaries to go hang with the ladies over there. The prisoners are going back. Judge Roy C. Lamberth, we've talked about here before on the channel, just issued another order reversing a Trump executive order. This one came down, District of Columbia. You can see it's the Jane Doe case, but you got to be careful about Jane's, probably more like John. But anyways, it is against Pamela Bondi at the DOJ, and this is in reaction to the trans prisoners who were shifted from one side to the other. The judge is saying, ship them back and misalign the genitals again, or something. Very confusing to keep track of these, so we don't spend much effort on it. But here on February 18th, this is from Judge Royce. Well, this court entered a preliminary injunction enjoining Trump's executive order. Trump said, all right, listen, dudes over here, chicks over there. Like, that's it. Just, you know where to go. Issued an executive order against a group of transgender women, we'll just use the terms loosely, on Eighth Amendment grounds, okay? So, Executive Order 14168. Yeah, Trump didn't issue it against them, but the judge is precluding it as to these Jane Does. Now, on February 21st, the plaintiffs, the Does, filed a motion to extend that preliminary injunction to a group of additional plaintiffs. Okay, so the Does come in, they're like, well, we want all the Does to join us for unity, which the court granted on February 24th. So basically made it, I don't know if those people joined officially as plaintiffs in the lawsuit or what happened, or if the judge just granted it to everybody and essentially certified a class, just like Boasberg did for the deportees. So the judge writes, on March 14th, the plaintiffs, the Does, moved with the consent of the defendants, so Trump, to file a second amended complaint. The second complaint is substantially identical to the first amended complaint, except it adds two other people, Rachel Doe and Ellen Doe. It's weird. It's like you're using pseudonyms, but you got to use first names to make sure we know that they're female, even though they're biologically not. Like, why don't you just call them two additional plaintiffs? Like, why do you need to put them in there? Anyways, so the new plaintiffs are in most respects similarly situated to the other plaintiffs, with one exception. While the other plaintiffs were pending transfer to a male penitentiary, so the Johns go back to the John penitentiary, when the court ruled on their motions for an injunction, these new plaintiffs have already been transferred to the male facilities. So Rachel became Roy and Ellen became Luke and got transferred back to the prisons. So then the plaintiffs have now moved for a preliminary injunction, the Does again, to stop the executive order against them and to have them returned back to the female prison facilities to be called Rachel and Ellen again. So the motion then repeats the previous arguments against Trump's order, but adds new factual grounds for new claims which arise. Here's what the new horror show is. First, the Does allege that the Bureau has already halted Rachel Doe's hormone therapy. So Rachel was going back into Roy, unlike the earlier plaintiffs who were only threatened with discontinuation of their therapy. So then second, the new plaintiffs allege that they have actually been subjected to sexual harassment at their new facilities. Of course they have. So then third, the new plaintiffs allege that since their transfer to a male facility, they have been unable to access bras and women's underwear because it's a male facility, you know. Fourth and finally, the new plaintiffs allege that they have been subject to strip searches by male prisoners without female officials present. In a sealed response, they contest each of these new claims, and so the court need not dwell on these arguments at this time because this judge like, this is disgusting. But even supposing that they are correct, Trump, that each plaintiff's new argument is either factually or legally defunct. Okay, well, so what? They don't get bras. They're not entitled to bras and panties of women panties. Okay, no. The new plaintiffs are at least as strongly situated in terms of their Eighth Amendment claims as the existing plaintiffs. Yeah, cruel and unusual. Moreover, the fact that they have already been transferred and allegedly they've been abused by not getting women's panties, they can only strengthen their claims of irreparable harm. The final two prongs of the preliminary injunction analysis, which is the balance of the equities and the public interest, are at least unchanged, and it's in the public interest to have biological men in women's prisons. Yeah, I guess that's in the public interest, says the judge. So therefore, the court is satisfied that the relief is appropriate for the two new plaintiffs for the same reasons as the others. And the court determines that it is appropriate in this case to enter an injunction against the government. The government has communicated that there's another form of relief here in accordance with this Litigation Reform Act. I can remedy this violation, and this is the least intrusive means for me to do this. And the court has considered any adverse impact on public safety in the criminal justice system, and there's no impact on public safety. There's no impact on the operation of the justice system. So they can go back to their trans identities across the facilities, and the women in the women's facilities can just eat it. So therefore, upon consideration of the plaintiffs and the entire record herein, here it is granted. So the trans going back, and Rachel and Ellen can continue to be Rachel and Ellen rather than Roy and Luke, and they're ordered to immediately transfer them back to women's penitentiaries to go hang with the ladies over there and to continue their gender dysphoria treatment at the cost of the American taxpayer, which ain't cheap. So signed there by Royce C. Lamberth, and we'll see what Trump does in response to that. So far, haven't seen a notice of appeal, although that order is fresh out of the oven. So we'll keep our eye on that one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.